Hello, and welcome to Liquid New Hampshire. This is going to be a video podcast. This is episode 1. The podcast is called Liquid New Hampshire because I'm advocating liquid democracy. Most of the episodes of the podcast are going to be me talking to people from around New Hampshire about their politics, but I thought that I would start off with just a basic explanation of what liquid democracy is, why I advocate it, and why I'm doing this. So, I've got with me here a big giant stack of books so that you know that I am smart. This microphone doesn't work. I'm going to put it down. And the top one here is the only important one. This is The Principles of Liquid Feedback. This is a book about liquid democracy. I'm pretty sure you can only pick it up from the actual group that does liquid democracy, like that invented the program. I don't believe I was able to find a copy on Amazon. But it's a very good book, very easy to read compared to a lot of political theory and stuff like that. It is a form of digital democracy, so it's voting from your smartphone. It's kind of a form of direct democracy, but I'll get into that in a moment, why calling it direct democracy is inaccurate. And I wanted to give you a bit of an explainer of what it is, because I've seen other explainers online, and I thought, oh, that could be like a kind of a cool idea from what I'd read online. And then I actually went and I read the actual book about it, and I realized just how bad of a job most of the explainers had actually done of capturing just how cool of an idea liquid democracy is. So first of all, the goal of liquid democracy is direct participation in the political process. It is to eventually be able to replace political representatives entirely, or at very least to be a platform for corporations or nonprofits or organizations like that that want to structure themselves in a democratic way and be a bit more directly participatory than the normal top-down sort of management approach to things. It allows you to vote on any issue directly. So just like in normal legislation, our legislators, they only vote on so many issues every year. This is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, actually, is legislative agenda setting, where the politicians first have to propose bills, and then they need to decide how many bills they're actually going to hear and discuss and vote on. Because obviously, our politicians can't just vote on an infinite number of bills. So what's weird is that we only talk about bills being voted on. Usually that's the only conversation topic, is like the bill is actually being voted on. But we don't talk a lot about legislative capacity. We don't talk a lot about how many bills got to be voted on or who introduced them in the process. That part of the process of lawmaking is usually kind of kept on the back burner. But it poses a serious problem. If you're an advocate of direct democracy, you have to figure out how many bills do we want to see be proposed at once. How many bills are people going to be voting on? Because you don't want to overwhelm the general public with hundreds and hundreds of bills to vote on. So one of the ways that liquid feedback addresses that is by allowing you to delegate your vote to somebody else. So it's kind of a way of saying we're neither going to be direct democracy nor representative democracy. Because if you talk to somebody who loves and believes in representative democracy about why, they'll tell you, they'll be like, I don't want to vote on every single issue. Like, I'm glad that there are people who are smarter than me, who have more time to spend on this, who are voting on the issues for me. I'm glad to be able to give my vote up. But then you talk to people who advocate direct democracy, and they say the exact opposite. They're like, no, I hate our politicians. I don't trust them. and I don't feel they're representing my opinions not correctly. Even the ones I vote for aren't respecting my opinions at all. So it says to me that my participation in this system is very limited by the way I'm asked to participate. So I want to vote on the issues directly. Liquid democracy allows you to do both. It allows you to participate directly as much or as little as you want, and to delegate to others as much or as little as you want. One of the nice things about that is that, and this doesn't get discussed directly in the book, but I think it's an implied reality of the system, is that you could have what's it called, interest groups, the NAACP, the NRA, any group that dedicates itself to a single issue, maybe legalization of marijuana, or sex work decriminalization, or you've got a pro-life organization that you support. Whatever issue it is that you care about, there's usually some sort of a group of people dedicated to that issue that is putting more time and energy and resources into it than the average voter is, right? Those people, there's no reason those groups couldn't put forward advertisement and say, hey, people from our group are going to vote this way. You know us, we're a pro-life organization, we're going to keep track of the bills, we're going to vote pro-life. So if you don't want to have to pay attention to every bill related to abortion-related issues and vote on them directly yourself, you can just delegate your votes to us. Maybe they have a designated guy you can delegate your votes to, and he'll vote pro-life on all of those issues for you. So it's not just direct democracy. It's not just representative democracy. It breaks down the binary of direct and representative democracy and creates a gradient between them, while allowing you to actually vote on your actual preferences. So, like I said, if there's a group called the American Solidarity Party. I want to have them on as a guest at some point and talk to them. They are a third party in America. They're neither Democrats nor Republicans. They are strongly pro-life. They hold other conservative views. I think they're opposed to gay marriage, for example. But they're economically pretty left-wing. You might call them like a social democrat, I guess, like a Bernie Sanders sort of a left-wing economy, right? And so they advocate things like universal health care, but they're also very strictly pro-life. Those people have no candidate in our current system. And they also wouldn't have a candidate in like a system that allowed a third party to participate. They probably wouldn't have a candidate unless their party managed to gain traction in some European country where there's a whole bunch of different political parties. Even then, it would be a struggle. They could very easily, anybody who shares their views and beliefs, could very easily express that within a system of liquid democracy. And I think there's a lot of people with different weird, niche, specific worldviews who might not perfectly align with the existing left-right binary on every single issue, but who still want to participate in politics, who want to express their views, and they would seriously benefit from the system. So rather than aligning myself with any one group of people and saying, oh, I'm left-wing, so here's my left-wing people, I'm right-wing, so here's my right-wing people, I'm going to try and talk to as many of these niche worldviews and ideologies as possible. I'm going to try to talk to as many people across New Hampshire as possible. And I'm going to try and get a good momentum going for this idea. And I'm also just going to try and introduce my audience to those perspectives. Because it's not all about liquid democracy. It's also about all of those groups of people that are left out of the system right now who need to have a voice and a platform. So let me get more into liquid democracy, because that's actually just the beginnings of what it can do. Another thing that you never hear talked about when people talk about liquid democracy is the legislative agenda setting process, the creation process. It's not just that anybody can vote on an issue. It's not like the government is putting out a series of issues and you vote on them. You can also propose legislation. Or if you're a part of an organization, you can propose an initiative, right? You can propose a task. And these proposed legislations will go into the software, and then people can garner support for them. If people like your idea, they can sort of upvote your idea, and then those will be displayed to everybody, and that's when the voting process begins. And they even think very critically about the political theory of stuff like this, because when they were developing the application's UI, they realized that obviously they don't want it to be the case that the only proposals that people get to see and vote on are the proposals that are the most popular by far, the most like majoritarian, everybody agrees on this issues. So they realized that they needed to have a way to simultaneously give minority views some degree of voice and majority views a proportionate degree of voice. So what they do is they basically create a proportional representation system. If any of you are familiar with European government, basically how a proportional representation system works is, let's say you have three big parties, right? Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians. And 20% of the population are Libertarian, and 40% are Democrats, and 40% are Republicans. Rather than ending up with somebody gets a landslide, like the Libertarians go to the Republicans, and the Republicans get a majority, and then they win, and then whatever policy they want gets passed because they have more than 50% of the votes. Rather than that sort of landslide victory, you would end up with 40% of your representatives are Republican, 40% of your representatives are Democrat, 20% are Libertarian, directly proportional to the population. So it wouldn't be a winner-takes-all election. They want the representatives in their system to look exactly as diverse as the voters in their society. So they do a kind of a similar thing, where the proposed initiatives, if it garners 10% support, then you're going to have like a 10% chance of being in the first page that you see of initiatives on your front page on the app. So the application actually changes what it is showing you, what it is displaying to you right up front to make sure that you're seeing majority opinions more often, but you're seeing minority opinions still proportionally often. Often enough, proportional to their support. So rather than a proposal that has only 10% support, you never see it, you see it 10% of the time. So they have a UI that allows you to propose legislation, that allows you to get minority voices heard. So it allows you to get issues that people aren't really talking about to the forefront, so that niche issues actually get seen and heard and talked about. And then it allows you to determine the degree to which you actually want to participate in the process of democracy and how much you want to delegate that to people that you believe are smarter and have more time to spend on these issues. So it puts all of the power back in the hands of you as an individual voter to decide for yourself what kind of system you want to have. This is just the beginning of, I think, a broader democratic transformation that needs to take place in the next few years. And I think it's going to come alongside a lot of other big changes, but I want to start small. I want to start with the place I live, and I want to start with local governments. I want to see if we can get this principles of liquid feedback into more local governments. I want to see if we can get local communities participating in town meetings, for example, using this kind of software. I want to see if we can get local small businesses using this kind of software. And then I want to build up. And if we end up garnering enough of a movement, that's when we start to sort of scale up and say, well, maybe now we can try this as a replacement for a local legislature. And then maybe eventually it starts to scale up until you see it as a replacement for state and federal legislatures. Another thing that happens in Iceland, the country that liquid democracy comes from, is they have candidates that will run and will be bound to the liquid feedback system. So even if it's not the case that all of the candidates in their government follow this system, they will have at least a handful of elected representatives from the Pirate Party in office who will follow what they're told to do by their directly democratic voters. So they're sort of gradually infiltrating their way into the legislative process, sort of gradually introducing this change. So those are the core principles of how the software works, and my hopes is that it will allow young people who are trying to express new and creative political positions in a time that desperately needs new ideas to really fully express themselves, especially here in New Hampshire. There we go.